So you grew up in Soviet times, and the preaching of the gospel is pretty limited, very limited at that time, as well as access to the Bible. How did your family end up getting to know about Jesus?
This is a very interesting question. So my grandma was religious. I would say she was religious. She prayed the Lord's Prayer, but we didn't really understand how that works. We sort of thought that there was God somewhere, but we didn't have any understanding.
Right.
I certainly didn't give it much thought at that time. But my grandma, I think that, of course, my grandma was born in 1926, and I think that back then a lot more people were religious, and they would go to church, especially on holidays. But as the Soviets kind of tightened the grip on the whole country and churches in the Soviet Union, that kind of became a less and less popular. And so my grandma I remember she still had, I think maybe she had some icons that she was kind of hiding. And so that was like the first introduction of religion for me. And of course, back in the Soviet days, you just could not go to the bookstore and find a Bible.
Right.
But the interesting thing was that my father, he was always very curious about the Bible. Well, his dad was the principal of the village school. He was a part of the Communist Party.
He was pretty staunch, atheist and communist.
He was, absolutely, yes. And so my dad was always curious about the Bible. He was just, you know how it is. The more you prohibit something, the more people want to know what it is and kind of look into that. So I think that he got a little bit of that in him. And so for years, he wanted to read the Bible for himself. But of course, the Bible that you could find possibly in the university library would be in Old Slavonic language, which you cannot understand today. Maybe you can understand certain words, but you would have to learn to read this certain script. And then he just never had an opportunity to read the Bible for himself. Until finally my uncle found this Bible. I don't know where he got it, like somewhere on the black market. He got this Bible and he gave it to my dad to read. And my dad was really excited. And so he started reading this Bible to my brother and me right at bedtime. So we would be tucked in bed, and I was 10 and my brother was 4. And I remember my dad reading the Bible out loud to us. I mean, to be honest, I wasn't impressed because my dad, I mean, now there are all these different methods of, okay, you should start here, you should start here. Well, he didn't know where to start. So I think he just opened it to the middle, and it ended in the book of Job. And so my introduction to the Bible began from Job scraping himself with a piece of pottery and crying and wailing and lamenting. So honestly, that put us to sleep pretty quickly. And
So that wasn't like a gospel moment.
No,
so
not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. And I don't think that I was interested at all at that time. I feel like I was very young and I had no interest. But my dad did. And so as he continued reading the Bible, that brought up more and more questions in his mind. And I think that was that moment where God started planting a seed in his heart.
No.
And it was interesting that when the Soviet Union broke apart in 1991 and Ukraine became independent, all of a sudden we found out that our neighbors that live on the other side of the stairwell from us, they were believers and they were going to a Baptist church on the other end of town. Wow, we didn't know about that. They were very secretive about those things. So they had a pretty big family. They had 5 kids. And so then their daughter, who was about my age, she started inviting me to youth groups. And actually, these same neighbors, they invited us to a Christmas outreach that was on our end of town. It was a Christmas time, and so it was for children. And so my parents brought my brother and me to that Christmas outreach. And at the end of that outreach, the 2 men that were in charge, they invited all of the people to come back the following Sunday for Bible study. And I think that that was really the moment when my dad realized that all those questions that he was accumulating from reading the scriptures on his own, all of a sudden things started getting clearer for him, and he realized that maybe this Bible study would be the answer to his questions. And the interesting thing is that my grandma actually started going to that main Baptist church kind of simultaneously. And so our family, both my parents repented on March 8th out of all the days, it's International Women's Day.
Yeah.
And my grandma repented at the big Baptist church. And then I repented a little bit later. And so our family came to Christ basically together.
So that would have been like, what, 91?
It was 91, yes.
91,
yes.
yeah.
And I was baptized in 1993.